But after the race, Carlos Sainz had his €500,000 watch stolen as he returned to Milan from the circuit.
I did see that.
Word on the street is that he chased down the person that stole his watch as he tried to escape, and then the police got him and he got his watch back. But like, what a weekend he had! Like Batman in the middle of the night.
Yeah, I did see that it was retrieved with help of the team, which I was surprised by. There's no like report of police. It was just like, no, the whole Ferrari gang just chasing
the whole
them
of
down.
Milan chased down.
Yeah, true. All of the Ferrari fans as well, just chasing down this guy and his watch.
Hello and welcome back to On Track GP, where today we are breaking down and going through the phenomenal 2023 Monza Grand Prix, which happened yesterday. And I'm very privileged to be joined today by the wonderfully well F1 educated content creator, Olivia Hartley. Thank you so much and welcome.
Thank you very much.
Your first time with
appearance.
us on Track GP, so thank you very much for giving up a little bit of your Monday to come and talk with us. Let's get initial first thoughts. What did you think of the race yesterday?
Exciting.
Yeah.
It was fun for a change. I mean, I feel bad saying it, but you know, we all agree.
Yeah.
Season has been a little bit slow, very, very dominated by Max Verstappen. Still was yesterday, but a lot more excitement going on behind him.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I tell you what, Zandvoort was kind of like that as well. So since we've come back from the summer break, it's like we've had a couple of pretty good over weekends as well, because both the qualifying sessions and the races on the Sunday have been really, really good. But let's jump to the headline, the breaking news, which, I mean, you can do nothing but stand back and clap, basically. Max Verstappen has now won 10 consecutive races in a row. That is terrifyingly good.
It's crazy.
Will we ever see? Because we said this when Vettel broke it for 9 races in a row. We thought, well, that's never going to happen again. He could do like 15 races in a row.
That's the thing. It's like, where does it actually stop? Because he's broken the record, which is amazing on its own.
Yeah.
But I have a feeling he could set a record that will never be broken by anyone again if he keeps going the way he is.
Well, the thing about Max is that he's so. I think when he crossed the line, his response on the radio was, "Yeah, not too bad." Like, he was so relaxed,
he's so like nonchalant, because he's just he expects it at this point. Which, why wouldn't he? I
think that if there was a race that you think maybe Max won't win this year, what do you think that might be?
Oh, I don't know. I really don't.
The one that jumps out for me, because it's a lesser known prospect, is Vegas. Obviously, they've been in the simulator, they'll know it, they've scanned the track and everything, but with the cars actually never having been round there until they go there on the Friday, and it's a Saturday night race in Vegas, it'll be like 6 a.m. for us in the UK. I just think there's a few variables and maybe something else.
A lot of different factors that they're facing. It's going to be a bit of an unknown for all of the drivers, so it could bring about some surprising results.
I guess the only thing with it, though, there is about a 7.5 mile straight, which by the looks of things, if anything, yesterday is to go by. The Red Bull's pretty good in a straight line. But look, Max Verstappen, I mean, that is absolutely incredible. It has to be, depending on how far he goes in this run, it has to go down as maybe one of the greatest individual performances we've ever seen in an F1 car.
Like I said, the dominance has just been crazy. I mean, people talk about Lewis Hamilton's dominance over the years, and he was, but not to this extent. He was always fighting a teammate who was a lot closer to him or another driver on the grid, and he fought for his championships a lot of the time, and it was close a lot of the time, but Max's dominance this year is just unseen.
What's wild is that it sort of feels like yesterday was one of the few times we've seen him this whole season actually have to make an overtake, or a real overtake, because the DRS was so much less effective yesterday at the track, that he was actually having to fight. And
give it to Carlos Sainz as well. He was putting up some
my boy
great
Carlos
defense.
Sainz. Yeah, absolutely.
He made him fight for it.
A wonderful stat going round that yesterday, while Carlos Sainz was leading for a mighty 14 laps, that is the longest time since the start of the season that any car has led that's not a Red Bull.
It's crazy, because at the time it was really exciting. It's like, oh my God, this is amazing. 14 laps without Max in the lead. And then when you think about it, it's actually ridiculous that we're sat here getting excited about that, and that it's been less than half a race that a non-Red Bull car has led.
Well, let's move over to Ferrari, because Carlos Sainz, it seems to, honestly, for the first time in like 3 years, or this is his 3rd year now with Ferrari, that he's starting to click with that car, and it's starting to work for him. The last few races, he started to look good, and I thought he had a particularly good weekend this weekend. What did you make of Carlos?
Definitely. He was, I think, clearly deserving of that podium on Sunday. He'd been outperforming Charles all weekend. And for me, I think it was the first time I thought that there really isn't a clear first driver at Ferrari. Carlos Sainz has really been holding his own just as well as Charles Leclerc has this season. And he really did deserve that podium. And when when Charles was asking, can we swap the cars around? I'm faster. Ferrari weren't really giving into it the way that they perhaps usually do.
Well,
so
like
I
with
think,
Schumacher and Barrichello,
So
where
I
they
think
used to
they're
just
also
get out the way, Rubens!
So I think Ferrari's also thinking it's not as clear cut as we maybe thought.
Yeah,
which is interesting.
You look at because your page is fantastic, and you go into such detail about the sort of delta, and you compare drivers. And for me, one of the most interesting things that you've done is the Carlos versus Charles. They are so tight this season.
Yeah.
Almost nothing separating them.
No.
So you're right, there's not really a first driver there.
No, and you look at average race pace and qualifying pace, Charles Leclerc does slightly beat him, but it's a very small difference.
It's tight, but ultimately, Carlos has got the better result at home Grand Prix, finishing on the podium. But my God, it was hairy towards the end.
God,
I don't know if you've sort of followed any of the stream, but yesterday I was falling to my knees, tearing my hair out at the end when Charles was just dive bombing for fun. So Carlos's tyres were shot. They were basically set for a 3-4. They weren't fighting with anybody else. George was super far back, and Perez was off in the distance. So all they had to do was just drive at home, nice and comfortably, take a nice big old points haul, because as a constructor, they're chasing down Mercedes. They're looking for second place. And then what happens? Charles goes, I'm going to mix this up a little bit. What was your
Fourth
thought?
place, no thanks.
No, he didn't want it. What were your thoughts on that? Like, what do you think is going through Ferrari's strategy to allow them to do this?
Again, I think that's a bit of a response from Charles on, like I said, the fact that the Ferrari isn't clear-cut about having a first driver anymore. It was always Charles Leclerc. They made that pretty clear, and that's not the case now. And I think he's probably feeling quite defensive and like, I need to fight for these positions and kind of show him who's boss type of thing. But they weren't having it. I mean, they were allowing the racing, which, I mean, I don't mind. I don't mind a good teammate fight.
I mean, there was one moment where, like, their wheels, I don't know how they didn't touch. I think this was like 3 laps ago. It was unbelievably close and so stressful. And then Carlos gets on the radio and says, right, come on, let's just bring this home.
Enough of this.
Like, I mean, and the other thing is, if they were the other way around, I know that Carlos would have been shooting as well.
Yeah.
100%. But if they were the other way around, I think Ferrari would have told Carlos to back off.
I think you're probably right.
But they didn't tell Charles to back off.
No.
So does that maybe show that they have a little mini 1-2 there?
Yeah, because again, I think there is still an element of that, and I think that they are still conscious of keeping Charles Leclerc happy.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of rumours circulating about other teams trying to negotiate with him, poach him. And I mean, to be honest, I don't think he'll ever go. I think he's far too loyal to Ferrari till the day he dies. I don't think there's any chance of him moving, to be honest. A bit like most of the Ferrari fans.
I'd be so much happier if I supported Red Bull in my life. Like, why don't I just switch? No, I never will. But I think Carlos goes on the radio and goes, right, come on, calm down, everybody. Let's just bring this home. And they go, yeah. And they go to Charles, right, mate, come on, no racing in the last lap. And then Charles Leclerc throws the most over-the-top aggressive dive bomb into turn 1 on the last lap, locks up all 4 tyres, takes the position, has to get it back. And I literally felt on the edge of death. My heart was beating so fast at the end.
He even said there was an interview afterwards, so he was walking through the paddock and he said, sorry for the heart attack, guys. So everyone who's watching is like on the edge of their seats.
Oh my God. I mean, because it turned out okay, amazing racing, but if they had crashed,
if they had to retire at the end of the race because of them fighting between each other, that would have been
at the home
very
Grand
bad
Prix,
for Ferrari.
They would not have got out of Monza. I think there's only one road in and one road out of Monza. They wouldn't have made it out there.
No.
But ultimately, it turned out okay. And before the race, I've sort of foolishly predicted a 1-2. I thought with my heart rather than my head a Ferrari 1-2. Realistically, come on, that was never going to happen. But a 3-4 for Ferrari, for me, is a great result.
It's good. I was hoping and praying for a double podium. I didn't think it was going to be a 1-2, but to at least hold the positions, or maybe Max overtake Carlos and then finish in 2nd and 3rd. That would have been nice to see, especially given that Perez was starting a few positions back.
Yeah, down in 5th. Let's talk about Sergio Perez. Generally, What have you made of his season?
I mean, it's not been amazing, considering he is in easily the fastest car on the grid. His qualifying in particular has been very poor. And I know a lot of people have put it down to different problems he's had, but when it's that many sessions back to back, I mean, there was a period of time where he'd gone several races without even making it past Q1, or he didn't make it into Q3. Yeah.
Like, absolutely disgraceful driving.
Yeah, and that then is not a coincidence anymore. There's something going on. So yeah, I think qualifying performance has been pretty poor from him, to be honest, but then the races he always brings it back.
He recovery drives.
Yeah.
And this is why I wanted to talk about a little bit today. Are we giving Sergio too much of a hard time? Because ultimately, right, what he should be doing is putting the car second behind Max. And a lot of the time he's qualifying badly, but then the Red Bull have built such an incredible car that he comes back and he goes second. And I've been such a critic of him. But you look through back so many of his races, and he has managed to somehow pull back a second place. But he shouldn't be in the position where he's having to pull back.
That's the thing. It's like, should he be qualifying as poorly as he is in that car? No, he definitely shouldn't. However, he's still doing his job as Red Bull's second driver. And there's been so much talk about, they need to get rid of Sergio Perez. He's not performing as well as Max, obviously. They need to bring someone else in. I just don't think they've got any motivation to do that. Sergio Perez is still very comfortable in that second driver position. He's second in the driver's standings until there is another team challenging them closely and threatening that second position in the driver's standings. They've got no reason to do anything.
So that's the thing. That's the big question. You bring up the really interesting point, is that ultimately there isn't a challenger for Red Bull at the minute. We saw a little bit, Ferrari occasionally, McLaren's turning up at Silverstone, that sort of thing. Occasionally a team, but not long-term is anybody challenging Red Bull this season. Now, assuming that they do keep Sergio Perez in the contract, they don't sack him off and he stays for 2024, could they maybe regret that decision if a Mercedes, a Ferrari, a McLaren, or even an Aston Martin suddenly spike, go on in crazy run of form, and have two drivers competing, scoring highly, and then are they then in a constructors battle that they shouldn't be in because the second driver isn't as strong?
Yeah.
Could they maybe regret that decision next year?
I think that's definitely a potential outcome. I mean, if Mercedes managed to get themselves together and be competitive again, they've got two of the best drivers on the grid, in my opinion. And if they've got a good car to go along with it, then they are going to be a serious threat to Red Bull once again. And I think same for McLaren. Again, if their performance over the last couple of races is indicative of the direction they're going in, they have such a strong driver lineup that I think could really be challenging for Sergio Perez if they were in better cars. So yeah, I think they could maybe come to regret it, but I don't think they would be shy about doing a mid-season switcheroo if they needed to, and they've got drivers waiting for that seat. I know Daniel Ricciardo would jump at it. They've got Liam Lawson now, who's doing so well in his first couple of races, so I don't think they'd be shy about making that move if they needed to.
Yeah, well, you mentioned Liam Lawson. He had, he's had, really, to be honest, I think he's had two great races. Not to bin it, to be completely honest. Keeping the car on the track, not causing any damage or costing anything to a team that doesn't have anywhere near as much money as the guys at the top in the AlphaTauri. And he finished 11th. I mean, he was close to points yesterday. Yes. But just ultimately finishing just outside. But I think this last couple of weeks, my God, can he hold his head high in these last 10, 11 days? Yeah,
I mean, I think what he's doing, given the circumstances, is incredible. I mean, at the last race in Zandvoort, it was such a messy race with the weather and the red flags, and there was many very, very experienced drivers who didn't make it to the end of racing sessions. So I think for him to just finish strongly without getting himself involved in any kind of mess was a performance in itself. And then, like you say, second ever Formula One race, and he's nearly in the points in an AlphaTauri, which the car isn't strong this year. It's just not. It's been one of the worst throughout most of the season. So yeah, I think he's doing great.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's having a fantastic season. Did you hear about the Monza curse, by the way?
Of course.
Obviously,
I'm well versed in the Monza curse.
Oh, that rhymes. I love a curse. I love a bit of like cheesy drama in Formula One. And it came out, at the end of the race, for the last few laps, Max Verstappen was told to slow down for the last sort of 3 or 4 laps because the team were looking to manage temperature issues to get the car to the end of the race. And he was losing about 3 seconds a lap. Sergio was gaining 3 seconds a lap. Now, if you remember back to the beginning of the race, Yuki Tsunoda cut 2 laps off the race because his car didn't start. So they had to do 2 extra formation laps. in theory,
if we hadn't have lost those 2 laps.
If he hadn't lost those 2 laps, Sergio would have caught up with him and potentially beaten him. The Monza curse is still alive. Yeah. It was just the amount of laps. That's it.
I do think it's funny that the Monza curse nearly got to him. He narrowly escaped it. However, that being said, if Sergio Perez had caught up with Max, I'm sure he would have done, given those 2 extra laps. There is no chance that Red Bull would have allowed him to overtake Max and take that 10 consecutive race win record away from him.
100%. You're completely right, but I just love a bit of the drama. We mentioned very briefly earlier on Aston Martin. I think Fernando Alonso is probably having the second best season out of anybody. Out of all 20 drivers after Max. What do you make of what he's capable of doing? Is he 43, I think, now? I mean, it's a joke.
Yeah, I mean, Aston Martin's performance this year has made it very clear that Alonso has still very much got it in him. He is still a championship driver. I think he's so skilled and he's such a reliable driver as well. He very rarely makes mistakes. And I mean, he was competing for all of the podiums and race wins at the beginning of the season, and a few other teams have come in and started to compete with them now, so they're not quite where they were, but still, I think if Aston Martin again continued that performance, was able to further develop their car next year, I honestly think that Alonso could still be competing against Max for championships. I think he's got the skill.
How exciting would that be?
That would be amazing.
I mean, really, the only way that you can measure yourself in Formula One is against the person that's in the same car as you, and if you measure Alonso against Lance Stroll, I mean, there's no point. There's no point even having the discussion.
You know what?
I was finished 41 seconds off Alonso today.
I was
yesterday.
Such a Lance Stroll apologist at the start of the season because I just thought everyone knows he's a midfield driver at best. It's no secret. But when Aston Martin were probably the second fastest team after Red Bull at the start of the season, I thought he was holding his own. You know, he's never going to be Fernando Alonso. He was never competing against him, but he was consistently making it into Q3, finishing in the points, a couple positions behind Alonso. So I think he was holding his own, all things considered. However, his performance does seem to have dropped off.
And it also seems like he doesn't care anymore. Like, I was watching his post-race interviews yesterday, and he's not even like engaged. He's not going, oh, you know, I wish we could have done better. He's like, yeah, car was slow, couldn't get anywhere. But you think, well, hold on, the car was slow, yeah, but you were 41 seconds off your teammate. I mean, that's as big a delta as maybe we've seen out of anybody yesterday. I mean, for me, it's just like, then the story came out that he wanted to play tennis, and it's just what is going on in there?
And Aston Martin had to like very seriously deny that he was not ditching Formula One for a tennis career.
To be fair, I've seen, and he does look like he has a very, very good forehand. So he would have some game.
Maybe that's his calling.
But yeah, I mean, ultimately, forget it, man. Like, he's not bringing anything to the sport, particularly if he doesn't care.
Yeah.
Like, it'd be one thing if he was there, you know, really, really passionate or like saying, oh, no, I want to improve this. But when people are doing interviews at the end of the race, you think there's so many professional drivers that would do anything to be in that car, which, by the way, was competitive at the beginning. And he's going, yeah, well, I mean, yeah, I was just slow today. What can I do? You think, well, come on, man. Talk about privilege. It's too much.
Yeah.
Too much for
Agreed.
me. So there was a bit of a sort of quite interesting moment, the crash, or well, it was a crash actually, because it broke Piastri's front wing between Hamilton and Piastri. Ultimately, that really damaged Oscar Piastri's race, and Lewis Hamilton was given a 5-second penalty. So firstly, what did you think of the crash? Did you think anyone was more at fault than the other?
I think it was quite clear that it was Lewis Hamilton's fault. I'm pretty sure everyone is in agreement with that.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I mean, there's been talks about, just from an analysis point of view, Piastri had a little bit of room to move further over, but he shouldn't have had to. And also, I think even it was very, very tight. I think they probably would have made contact even if he had been further over. So no, I think it was Lewis Hamilton's fault. I think the penalty was rightly given out.
I'll tell you what's an interesting thing is that there was a lot of talk afterwards of people going, right, Oscar Piastri's lost 35 seconds, right, because he's had to come in and change a front wing. Lewis Hamilton was the fault of the crash, and he's only gets 5 seconds. How is that fair? And I thought about it, but you can't. You have to have a blanket rule for everything. If you cause a crash, you're going to be given a penalty, and ultimately, I think it's going to like level out over the course of the season. In this case, it's really unfair for Oscar Piastri. It's really tough, really difficult, but it will probably even out over the season. Yeah. You know what I mean? At some point, or in the future. And fair play to Lewis. We did see him at the end of the race go over, shake his hand, apologies. You know, I'm sorry that happened, that kind of thing. So hopefully there's clear air. But generally, how do you feel about the penalty rule?
Again, I agree with you. I think it's just a standard rule. 5-second penalties are the standard when something like that happens. A 10-second penalty if it's repeated or if it's a lot more severe. And I don't think you can suddenly get angry and say, well, he should be given a 35-second penalty because Oscar lost 35 seconds, because that's just not the rules, whether we like it or not. And like you say, it's just going to be the same for everyone and every incident. And I think they gave the penalty to him. He accepted it. He apologised, like you said, and admitted fault. And I don't think there's much more you can say about it than that, really.
Yeah, it's tough, isn't it? I mean, it's just one of those things in the race. But I saw there was a lot of anger, basically saying that Piastri was doing all right, and then Lewis mucks it up for him.
Yeah.
But
I also don't think it was malicious either. You know, he was looking left into the turn. He focused on the apex at that point. Oscar was behind him. You're kind of having to sense and guess where that car is to a certain extent. I don't think he was like forcibly pushing him out the way. And there was very nearly a similar incident between Perez and Leclerc. And it's just about guessing lucky, really. The contact is pretty inevitable a lot of the time.
Yeah, so. I think you're totally right. I don't think Lewis was looking to do that on purpose. Let's have a very brief chat about Alex Albon. I mean, suddenly that Williams car looks like a pretty good car, particularly at this circuit.
You know, I'm such an Alex Albon stan. I think he is a great driver. I'd say underrated, but I think people recognise his talent. I think it's pretty clear that he's outperforming so significantly in that Williams car, because I don't think it's magically gotten so much faster. I think he's clicked with it a bit, I think, and he's just always, I think, been a great driver and is really just outperforming in that car. And I'd love to see him continue to thrive, maybe hopefully get a position at a stronger team in the next few years to come.
Well, we saw him obviously go to Red Bull, and for a little time, it looked like that was basically going to end his career, because the way that he was treated and the results that he was putting in, it looked like he was going to lose a seat in Formula 1 altogether. And he's come back, he's rebuilt, and now he is showing what a phenomenal prospect. And he's still young. Yeah. He's still got a lot of years of driving in him. And it'll be interesting to see whether he sticks with Williams, if they say, because, you know, he's a hot prospect now, right? It'd be interesting whether Williams come to him and say, here's our plan for the next 4 years. We can get the car fourth, third. And he goes, okay, actually, that's a project I'm interested in. Or somebody like, I don't know, maybe McLaren is a bad example because they have two young drivers, but maybe even the likes of Ferrari come and say, what do you think? Do you want to come and drive for us? Be interesting. What way do you think that he would rather go?
It's hard. I think he has some kind of loyalty to Williams. I do think he enjoys racing with them. I think they have a good relationship. And they work together, and the car is not as bad as it was. However, I think he's a great driver with a lot of potential, and I don't think he would turn down a top seat if he was offered one. I think the only thing that will hold him back is where he can go, because Red Bull will take someone from within their junior academy / AlphaTauri. Yeah, I think they'll be taking Daniel Ricciardo, Liam Lawson before they consider anyone else. Ferrari, I think it would take a lot for them to drop Carlos Sainz and in particular Charles Leclerc. And McLaren, like you say, they've got a really, really strong young driver lineup. So that's the only thing, is I don't see where a spot would be opening up in the next few years, but I do think he'd take it if it did.
Interesting. I mean, I really like the idea of Williams getting back to where they were, because they've had, up until now, a horrible, 3 or 4 years. Yeah. And now they have a performing car, and they're such a historic team. Yes. Such a historic team. It'd be lovely to sort of have them back fighting towards the top. I don't know if you saw this yesterday, but after the race, Carlos Sainz had his €500,000 watch stolen as he returned to Milan from the circuit.
I did see that.
Word on the street is that he chased down the person that stole his watch as he tried to escape, and then the police got him and he got his watch back. But what a weekend he had! Batman in the middle of the night. Yeah, I did see that it was
retrieved with help of the team, which I was surprised by. There's no report of police. It was just no, the whole Ferrari gang just chasing them down.
The whole of Milan chased down.
Yeah, true. All of the Ferrari fans as well, just chasing down this guy and his watch.
I mean, that's very brave. Good on him. I mean, I'm glad that he wasn't hurt or injured or anything, but like a pretty traumatic thing to happen after a lovely weekend.
Indeed.
Let's look to round up. Who would you say are the sort of, if there was one or two standout performances from the Monza race yesterday that you think deserve to be commended?
I think the obvious choice is Carlos Sainz. I think he
baby
put up a really great defense. He did as much as he could have done in that first half of the race, and the reality is he was never going to hold up across the whole race against Max in a Red Bull. It's just unrealistic, unfortunately. So I think he did very well with what he was given. And I think that's definitely commendable that he managed to remain on the podium at least.
Totally agree. I think I hope this is the sort of a big turning point for him, and he can start to, who knows how this blooming Ferrari is going to perform. They'll probably double DNF next week, 2 weeks' time or whatever. Well, speaking of poor performances, for me, the biggest sort of like people that will be the most upset with their weekend, Alpine. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Rubbish. And Haas a bit as well, but particularly Alpine.
They're so neither here nor there at the minute. And they were reasonably strong at the start of the season, particularly Esteban Ocon was getting some really good results. I mean, the podium in Monaco was incredible to watch.
Gasly got a podium last week.
Yeah,
exactly. What's going on?
Yeah, their performance is just so up and down, it seems. It's quite inconsistent, and also quite inconsistent between drivers. Like you'll see things like that, which you've now seen twice, where one of their drivers is on the podium and the other one is kind of just struggling somewhere else, somewhere at the bottom of the grid.
I tell you who they need.
Go on.
Binotto. Get him in. Get him in.
God.
Get him in.
Did you see that they said that they saw the Netflix cameras filming Binotto quite closely in the paddock? So like, surely he's got to have some kind of significant role within F1 again for them to be paying that much attention to him.
He's got to be going there. I mean, they need so. I think that'd be a good signing for them. And I love the guy. I'd love to see him back.
He's certainly a character.
Well, look, we have a week off now. And then we go over to Asia, Singapore, which I think is always quite an interesting race. We're due some rain at Singapore, big time, because I don't think it has rained for a while there, but it's the sort of place where it should be raining, so that could be quite interesting. And the weather gods in F1 this year have been treating us.
They love the rain. They absolutely love it.
And then it's a double header as afterwards we go over to Japan. I mean, let's do very, very early predictions. Who you think could have some success in Singapore in a couple of weeks' time?
Well, I'm looking forward to Liam Lawson again, because I think AlphaTauri have confirmed that they don't expect Daniel to have recovered by then. So we get to see him race for the third time. So I'm excited for that. And particularly with rain mixing up the order, I think that's a good opportunity for him to potentially score his first points. I would love to see that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Last question, is any other team going to win a race apart from Red Bull this season?
I think it could happen. There's plenty of opportunity for it, because there are other teams that are not miles and miles off now. Like I said, Ferrari, McLaren, Aston Martin, they're all kind of up there. But I do think that something would have to go wrong for Red Bull. Yeah. So if we get rain in Singapore and something happens to Max or something like that, and both of the Red Bulls suffer a DNF for some reason, then there's the opportunity. But I struggle to see another team earning a win off of pure speed and merit without something wrong going for Red Bull.
I think the RB19 potentially already goes down as the greatest F1 car ever built.
It certainly has to be the most dominant in terms of the gap between...
And it's not going wrong!
No.
There's no errors with it!
It's
quick and consistent!
That's the thing for... To be fair, Red Bull in general, they are very, very good with consistency and with their strategy as well. It is always flawless. They never, ever make any mistakes, unlike Ferrari, quite famously.
Yeah. We'll leave that one there. Olivia, thank you so much for coming in and joining us. It would be lovely to have you in again soon. But for now, that is us wrapping up an incredibly exciting double header from Zandvoort into Monza. It's been phenomenal racing, not just the good qualities on the Saturday, but also fantastic racing on the Sunday. So thank you very much. But we will be keeping all the content coming to you throughout the rest of the season and beyond into the future. Thank you for joining us. We are On Track GP. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you very soon.